Well, hi folks. I think I'm live. How's it going? Chuck Holton here. And we're in Jerusalem. It is, let's see, wow, 6:30 on Sunday, December 3rd, 6:30 p.m. So good morning for you in the West, and I'd like to know where you all coming from. I see somebody from Canada, and so tell me where you're from. I'd like to know who's online, and hopefully you can hear me okay. Everything's all right. Been having trouble with these little microphones today. Microphone's just not liking me much. I'm trying to see if I can get these working. They don't want to work. Huh. Well, anyhow. Okay, so we got Ohio, Singapore, New Orleans, Texas, Illinois. It says audio is low. Well, let me see if I can turn it up some. Output is all the way up. Input is USB. How's that? Maybe you can hear me better now. Missouri, Australia, Northern California, South Dakota, Macon, Georgia, Portland, Oregon. Wow. Sweden, South Africa, North Idaho. Is this not amazing? California. Wow. Okay. Amazing. People from all over the world. Germany, New Jersey, Canada, India, Kentucky, Nevada, West Virginia, by God, Cape Town, South Africa, Seattle, Southern California, Bulgaria, Maryland, Norway. This is amazing. I had no idea we had people from all over the world that were watching these things. That's really cool. So now, if y'all, I'm gonna say, honey, get some tea. Okay, so I'm here in Israel. We're going to talk about some updates of what's going on in the war down in Gaza. And we're going to talk about another topic which is absolutely unbelievable to me. I've been looking into today that is going to blow your mind. It's just going to blow your mind. Singapore. Man, you got all the place. So in the south, in Gaza, the IDF is ramping up the amount, frequency, intensity of their attacks. And they are attacking, they've surrounded virtually all of Gaza City. Well, yeah, they have surrounded all of Gaza City. If you look at the map, it kind of shows a little capital L shape in Gaza, but if you think about the fact that Israel holds everything around that, it's actually a circle. What is amazing to me, and I've found that if I run the videos from the IDF on this live, then YouTube will demonetize the live. So what I'm doing is I'm putting the videos that I'm talking about up on my website at chuckholton.com, and you can go there and watch them. It takes you to my locals page, and you don't have to subscribe or anything like that. You should be able to watch most of the stuff on there. There are a few things that are for supporters only. So there's free subscriber, which means you sign up and give them your email address, and then you get access to all the stuff on my page. But it doesn't cost you anything. And then there's supporters who actually are wanting to support my work financially, which we then are using to keep us out here. So we appreciate that. And obviously this is CBN. So if you like the reporting that you're getting from CBN, it would be great if you would go over and support CBN. Before you support me, go support them. CBN is spending a lot of money. We've got a big team here in Israel keeping this news coming. and we're going to keep doing it as long as we can. So in the South, the amount of like bombings and stuff has really ramped up. And I was talking about this last night, that the Israelis sort of have to ramp this up. They've got to go as hard as they can in the South because of the pressure that's mounting on them from the United States. That's very likely to ensure that Israel won't be able to accomplish their goals in the South, that is taking out Hamas, because the United States is putting so much pressure on them to stop fighting. The United States would love it. The Biden administration would love it if Israel stopped right now and just let Hamas continue doing what they're doing, and it would be a foregone conclusion that we'd have another version of October 7th before too long. So Israel knows they've got to do this, and they've got to get it done quick. So they are putting themselves at greater risk. They're going much harder, much faster. And word is now, this has not been confirmed by the Israelis, but there is word on the internet and videos out that say that Israel is actually is on the ground in southern Lebanon. Southern Lebanon. Man, I'm a little out of it today. In southern Gaza, meaning Khan Yunis area. Now, we know that they've been bombing Khan Yunis for some time, and they ramped those bombings up today big time. There's been a lot of bombings in the south, but there haven't been any reports of IDF troops being in the south. Now we're getting reports of that happening, but the IDF has not said that they're down there yet. Wouldn't surprise me if they had some limited things going in there. Now, there's a really spectacular video on going around the internet today of the IDF absolutely flattening an entire neighborhood of like 8-story buildings in Khan Yunis. It's a neighborhood that reportedly was built by the Qataris. And some people are saying that this is, that the IDF is flattening these buildings just to get back at the Qataris because the negotiations broke down, or because they're harboring the leaders of Hamas. I don't really buy that. I don't think Israel can afford to be petty right now. The bombings that they are doing are going to have a military significance, not just be for some emotional reason like we want to, poke Qatar in the eye. It's very likely that there were rockets being fired at Israel out of that neighborhood. And there were a lot of rockets fired out of Gaza and southern Gaza over the last 2 days. Not as many today as we had yesterday, but there were still quite a few today. I was sitting in church and getting bing, 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 bing on my phone from rockets being fired out of Gaza. They're also being fired out of the north, and Israel is again responding in the north and blowing them up. In the video that you see of, and again, I put this up on my website. I tried to before this happened. It's probably still uploading. If it's not up there right now, it'll be up there as soon as this is over. But this video shows this line of buildings, 7, 8 stories tall, I don't know, something like that. And they're just going one after the other, boom, 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 and just demolishing each building in turn. And there's, next to the buildings, there's just a big wide open area of like desert, just big dirt lots that is probably 100 acres of dirt out there. And so the people are sort of standing out in the dirt, just watching their houses just go boom, boom, boom. And so it's pretty clear that the IDF warned them ahead of time to get out, because you see people, before the bombing starts, you see people sort of sauntering away from the houses, getting out across the road into the desert. And then they just watch as the houses get turned to rubble. That's got to be pretty upsetting. You have to, have some compassion for people who are watching their homes be destroyed. But if there are rockets being fired out of your home, like I said, what we're finding is that Gaza is not a big civilian area with some military stuff in it. It's a big military base with some civilians in it. And Hamas has militarized everything in the Gaza Strip. And so Israel is like, well, if it's being used by Hamas, we're going to destroy it. And if those people lose their houses, it's not Israel's fault. Again, what would you have them do after what happened to Israel? What, would you have them just go, oh, well, that wasn't nice? No, they have to do this. And any destruction, any death that happens on the part, in Gaza is on the hands of Hamas. I'm going to say that every night if I have to. There's still people who think that it's Israel's fault that this is happening, but it's not. So that's pretty much what's happening in the South. Now, here's something interesting, and I'm going to keep it kind of short today because it's Sunday, and I'm going to take some time just to rest my voice and stuff tonight. But today we got news from the Biden administration that they alerted the Israelis that they are going to implement a visa ban against an unnamed number of settlers, Israelis who live in Judea and Samaria. Now, for those of you who haven't heard me explain this before, I'll just quickly explain it. That the West Bank is not Israel. The West Bank is Israel. It's Israeli territory. The Israeli controls it. The Israelis control it. They took it back in the 1960s. They've held it ever since. They've administered it at different times. And then in the 1990s, under the Oslo Accords, they agreed to partition it up into zones, A, B, and C. And the A zones would be handed over and allowed to be administered and secured, that is policed, by the Arabs, by the Palestinians. The B zones would be transitory zones where the Arabs would manage it, but Israelis could move through it to get to where they're going. And the C zones are Israeli land. And Israelis can live there. So the entirety of the West Bank does not belong to the Palestinians. None of it belongs to the Palestinians per se. It's all Israeli territory. But the Arabs have been given the chance to administer, manage, and control and police the A zones throughout Hebron, Judea, and Samaria. And East Jerusalem, I guess, would count as part of that. Now, you'll hear in the media that the West Bank is Palestinian land and it belongs to the Palestinians, all of it, and the Israelis that go in there or to live there are there illegally. That is an absolute lie. It's a lie that's been repeated so many times that many people believe it to be the truth, but it is a lie nonetheless. The C zones, which constitutes about 60% of the West Bank, are Israeli land, and any Israeli that wants to can go live in there. The Israelis that decide to go live in there are called settlers by the world body. But in reality, they're just moving into part of Israel. It's a part of Israel that is a little riskier, a little more dangerous to live in because you're surrounded by Arabs. And so there are a lot of people that move in there who, don't have a lot of money. It would be the Israeli equivalent, I guess, of like the trailer parks that you see in poorer areas around the United States. But they're there for a different reason, because the trailers that you see in the C zones of the West Bank, where the Israelis are establishing themselves, is because since it's government land, government-owned land, Israeli land, the way the rules are is that they can go in there and they can claim a piece of it to build on. They have to set up shop, like put up a tent literally, and like literally stay on the land and make sure that they are living there. And so, you know, somebody has to go like camp out on this land for literally years in order to establish the fact that they have the right to call it their own. They don't get to own it anyway, but they will get to permission to build on it. Once they've lived on it for a matter of years. Now, they're not living in a tent the whole time, but it has to be a temporary structure that can be taken down or moved if the Israeli government decides that they can't be there for whatever reason. You know, if an Arab comes and says, look, I make my living on this land, this is my orchard, well, then the Israeli government will not allow Israeli citizens to live on that land. They'll kick them off. There's a lot of ways that Arabs can keep them from moving into different parts of that land. And again, they have to get a building permit. So what they'll do is they'll build these things that to me look like a house trailer, but it's not on wheels like you'd see in the States. And there's just another ambulance. They live in these things, and you know, it's cheap. It's a cheap place to live. So you'll have young people that live there. They put up some kind of like a Jewish version of a madrasa, I guess. It's like a religious school out there. So there's a lot of young guys that they want to go and spend a year before their army service to, you know, get to know their faith a little better. They can go and live on one of these places and kind of camp out on that land. I don't fully understand all that, but it was explained to me yesterday when we were out there. We got a tour and we were shown around this area. And once they've established that for like 3 years, then they can try to get a building permit. So it could take, you know, between 3 and like 8, maybe even 10 years before you can actually build your house on a piece of property. And in that time, you've got to occupy that land for the entire time. So there is law that governs how Israelis can move into the West Bank and live there. Israeli law. And they follow that law in order to make these settlements that you see. There's about 350 maybe settlements of Israelis out there. And they get to, they do it legally, and then they get a building permit, and then they build their house out there, and they build a little gated community or whatever. And that's what you see happening. That's not illegal under Israeli law. Now the UN has declared that all of the West Bank belongs to the Palestinians. That would be like, that'd be like the United Nations coming in and saying, everything in Nevada north of Las Vegas belongs to, you know, illegal immigrants who are coming into your country who live there, and or everything, you know, from Los Angeles to the Mexican border belongs to Qataris or Chinese people, or I mean, just like, wait, what? You know, only Latinos can live in New Mexico. That'd be like the UN declaring that. We'd be like, who gives a rip what the UN thinks? That's not what the US law says. And, you know, ask yourself this. When does international law supersede the sovereign law of the nation in question? And would you accept that if the UN declared your firearms to be illegal? Would you accept that if the UN said it's illegal for you to eat meat from now on, which they may try to do? And then the whole media, everybody in the world started saying, oh, those Americans, they're all illegal because they have firearms. They're all illegal because they eat meat, you know, whatever. That's essentially what is happening here in Israel. And so you keep seeing this narrative pushed that the settlers, the Israeli settlers that are in the West Bank, are illegally occupying land that belongs to the Palestinians. But it's just not true. It's just not even close to true. And no matter how many times the world media says that, it's not going to make it any more true. And that is one of the favorite refrains of the Biden administration these days. The Biden administration has really latched on to the fact that there are Israelis living in West Bank land as some sort of proof that Israel is treating the Palestinians unjustly. But it's just not the case. They say that there's been a spate of murders in the West Bank by Israeli settlers. And when you read the news articles about this, what they'll do is they'll start out by saying 218 people have been killed in the West Bank by Israelis this year. Then you read a little further and you find out that 210 of those 218 were killed by IDF troops when they were going in on missions to take out Hamas operatives that are living in the West Bank. And they killed people who were shooting at them or throwing rocks at them or, you know, trying to kill them. Okay, so that has nothing to do with the settlers or the settlements in the West Bank, but you'll see that woven into the news piece that this big number, 218 people, have been killed in the West Bank this year. The vast majority, all but 8 of them, were killed on missions, military-related missions, by the IDF into the West Bank to take out terrorists. And 8 of them have supposedly been killed by settlers. Okay, so 8 out of 2.5 million people. There have been 8 murders by Israeli settlers of Palestinians in the West Bank. Now, you have to kind of drill into those numbers a little bit and say, well, so what happened there? Well, in most of the cases, it was Israeli settlers defending themselves as they were being attacked by, not Hamas, but Palestinians in B zones, zones where both Israelis and Arabs can go. The news articles make it sound like Israeli settlers are like jocking up, getting their assault rifles, going full America, and rolling into Nablus and just machine gunning kids in this kindergarten or something, okay? Well, you've heard me talk about this. These A zones, Israeli citizens literally cannot enter those zones. And that's where the vast majority of these Palestinians live. They can't go in there. There's a huge red sign that says, illegal for Israelis to enter, danger to your lives. Why is there a sign like that? Well, why did they make it illegal for Israelis to go in there? Because if Israelis go into Nablus, they die. They are killed by Palestinians. Now, strangely enough, there are no signs like that on the other side. Now, they're at where those signs are, those red signs that say danger to your lives, Israelis not allowed. There's a checkpoint there, and the IDF runs that checkpoint, and they check you. If you want to go in there, they're finding out, you know, looking in every car, are you an Israeli? If you're an Israeli, they won't let you in. They also check the people coming out. Why? Because of what happened just the other day, right here down the road from me, where 3 Israelis, or 4 now, were shot and killed by 2 guys who came out of the A zone in the West Bank and drove in here. Or I'm sorry, I think they came out of East Jerusalem, which is not an A zone, it's like a B zone. They came out of the West Bank and murdered 4 Israeli citizens, gunned them down in the street, waiting for a bus. So they have to check the people coming out of the A zones because they will export that violence to the society at large here in Israel if they don't. And that's been proven time and time again. They wouldn't have those checkpoints if they didn't have that problem. There's no reason to have them there. But what you'll notice if you happened to be coming out of the A zone is that there is no sign that says danger to your lives to the Arabs that are coming out of the A zones. Why is that? Well, it's because the Israelis don't make a habit of killing Arabs who happen to come into the rest of Israel. They make a habit of hiring them and putting them to work, giving them jobs. You go to the mall here and everybody that works in the mall is Arab. They're Palestinians. I bought this pair of shoes I'm wearing from a Palestinian girl in the mall the other day. So now the Biden administration is saying that they're going to make a visa ban, not against the Palestinians who are fomenting violence, who are calling for violence, not against the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, who is literally going on television and calling for a repeat of October 7th coming out of the West Bank. No, they're not going to put a visa ban on those guys. Of course not. They're putting a visa ban on the Israeli settlers who live in the West Bank. Not all of them. Well, but in a sense, yes, all of them, because what they've done is they said, we're going to make a visa ban against a number of settlers out of the West Bank, but we're not going to release their names. So some number of settlers out of the West Bank are no longer allowed to travel to the United States, but we're not going to tell you who. Why? Because they want all of the settlers in the West Bank to feel the pressure. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So, I mean, let me just see if you understand what I'm saying here. The Biden administration is now punishing people who are living legally in Israeli territory, on Israeli land, who did not, like, go in and, kick in the door of some poor Arab family and toss them out on their ear and then move into their house. No, they pay for the land. They pay for a building permit. They literally camp out on that land and to establish that they're serious about owning it, and stay there for years. And then they go build these settlements in there legally with the blessing of the Israeli government. And the Biden administration is punishing those people. But he's not punishing the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, who calls for violence every day against Jews. They do more than call for it. They actually pay people to do it. And they use American money to pay for that. If this doesn't make your head explode, I don't know what will. American taxpayer dollars are going to the Palestinian Authority to the tune of, $330 million last year. And now we tell them when we give it to them, now you can't use this for terror. Okay, you got a pinky promise. Don't use it for terror. But then the Palestinian Authority says, yeah, no problem, we'll use that for food, and we'll use the money we would have used for food for terror. Got it. How's that? So they spend about $300 million a year paying a stipend to people who attack Israelis and kill Jews. They get a lifetime pension once they do that. If they die in the attack, then their families get the lifetime pension. Depending on how many kids they have and how many wives they have, the pension goes up. Depending on how many Jews they kill, the pension goes up to the point where it can be as high as $4,000 a month, $4,000 or $5,000 a month, which is like winning the lottery in the West Bank. That's more than 4 times what the average salary is in the West Bank. So it's not just a reward for people who attack Jews. It's an incentive for more people to attack Jews. All the while, you've got the leadership in the Palestinian Authority calling for attacks on Jews, and the Biden administration is punishing the Israelis. Work that out. See if you can wrap your head around that. It's just almost too much to take in. It really is. I had a wonderful lunch yesterday in a West Bank community with a family of one of our viewers who had contacted me on email. You can email me at hotzoneholton@gmail.com. hotzoneholton@gmail.com. You can go follow my further reporting on not just this topic, but lots of topics, and immigration and Ukraine and all sorts of things, over at my podcast at The Hot Zone here on YouTube. I would encourage you to go subscribe over there, and it'd be very helpful for me. If you already subscribe to my Hot Zone podcast, that's wonderful. I really appreciate it, and we're getting a tremendous amount of traction over there as we're, trying to help people. One of the things we do is that people donate over at the Hot Zone, and while we're doing these lives, people are donating with these super chats and super thanks and stuff. And so what we're doing is we're just giving that money away while we're here in Israel. We raise that money. I mean, I'm not asking for it, but people are sending money. We're certainly appreciative. Yesterday, one of the guys sent like $50 and said, hey, because he could hear the kids playing in the parking lot down here right below me. We went over there today and we talked to the hotel and asked them how many kids they have over there. And they said there's 47 children living in this hotel right here who are internally displaced because they can't go back to their homes or their schools because of the shelling coming out of mostly Lebanon. Most of these people are from the north. There are some from the south. So they've been evacuated out of the north border areas, and they're living in this hotel. And these poor kids are bored to death. They don't have a playground here. There's a little park across the street, but it's not like a playground in it. It's just, kind of a park for sitting in, not for playing in. So they play soccer in the parking lot down here, and they try to have a good time. So some guy on my podcast over at the Hot Zone said, here's $50, buy those kids some candy. And I said, wow, great idea. So we went over there to ask them and found out how many kids there are. And you know what? I think we're going to do more than that. Tonight on my channel, we're going to do just a little mini fundraiser and raise a little bit of money. And we're going to buy those kids little boxes of gifts and candies and treats for Hanukkah, which starts on the 7th of December here in a few days. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun. So if you want to be a part of that, you can go over and subscribe on the Hot Zone, and you can contact us that way and donate however you like. But I'm not saying you have to or anything. Like I say here, I would encourage you, if you're going to donate anything, donate it to CBN, because they make really good use of it, and they're very good at actually magnifying the effect of the money that we get. I've been working with CBN. I'm a freelancer, but I've been working with CBN since 2003, so more than 20 years. And I've seen it over and over where they will, instead of like buying $10,000 worth of food and giving it away, they will spend $10,000 to hire a bunch of trucks and then send the trucks around to local businesses outside of the affected zone and collect $1.5 million worth of aid, and then that those guys just donate, and then they'll just show up and say, hey, we've got trucks. If you want to donate anything to the people that are hurting in the hurricane zone or whatever, we'll transport it for you. And like Sam's Club and stuff will be like, sure, here's $30,000 worth of food. And so our little $10,000 will actually be magnified to over $1.5 million. And they're very good at doing that here at CBN. So you can feel confident that the money that you donate to CBN actually helps a lot. Okay, enough talking about donations. I don't like talking about that stuff. Okay, so I saw some questions flying by here. I'll try to answer a couple of them before we have to go. Question, Benjamin Netanyahu, president of the C-Zone, yes, to impose security and policing building permits in the B-Zones. So in the B-Zones are administered by the Palestinian Authority under the agreement that was reached under the Oslo Accords in the 90s. And the IDF provides policing in the B-Zones. Why? Because if the IDF didn't provide policing in the B-Zones, then they would be A-Zones, and Israelis would die if they were driving through there. And they do die sometimes even when the IDF is there as police. In the little town that I was driving through to go to HaYovel up in Samaria the other day, there's a heavy IDF presence. And back in February of this year, there was a guy just transiting through there, heading somewhere, and a couple of terrorists jumped out and machine gunned them down and killed them. These were residents of one of the Israeli settlements out there. And so the B zones are policed by the IDF, but are administered, as in the civil administration, by the Arabs. Okay, how's the coffee over here? Pretty good, but I bring my own from Panama because it's better. Why is that? Somebody saying Holton 2024? I don't think so, man. There's one thing I've always said whenever people say I should run for office, and that is there is not enough Secret Service to protect me from my wife, because she would not go for that. No way, no how. Right, honey? Forget the candy, stop the war. Okay, well, how about, since I can't stop the war, we go ahead with the candy anyway. Marcus. Yeah, like Operation Christmas Child. We're going to do something like that and just go help those kids because they're bored down there. Thank you, Wing Chun. India, do you think this will spill over to the UK? Brett M. asks if I think this will spill over to the UK. In a manner of speaking, it already has. Obviously, you've seen hundreds of thousands of people protesting in support of Hamas in London and stuff like that. You've also seen some pro-Israel rallies, but most of what I've seen have been Palestinian rallies. And so I'm dying here. Would you just give me a lozenge, honey? I'm trying to protect my voice. I've got another hour of TV and a couple of hits left to do tonight. Thank you, dear. I love you. Okay. Ooh, that was a strong one. So he's asking whether or not it would be a problem in the UK. I think the likelihood of a terror attack blamed on this war in the UK is super high, very, very high. And the likelihood of a massive multi-cell terror attack happening in the West, the United States or the UK, is also higher than it's been in a long, long time. Under the Trump administration, we didn't really have all this as so bad, but it's quite a bit worse now because of this war. I read on X that Bedouin fighters were involved in fighting Hamas. Some, yes. Okay, so M. Stevens, that is true. So the IDF is not only made up of Jews. The IDF has Arab soldiers. Uh-oh. What do we got here? Oh, it's somebody important. Looks like they're taking somebody important somewhere. There's 70 ZAR. There was a stabbing attack in Paris in the last 24 hours by an Islamist. I did not know about that. Thank you for letting me know. So yes, I mean, it just proves my point that the likelihood of terror attacks on Western countries has increased. As a matter of fact, a British ship in the Red Sea, thank you, love, was attacked with a missile by Yemen today. And I haven't heard anything about any injuries. It didn't sink the ship or anything. But Yemen is being its old, jovial self, just lobbing missiles at everything that drives by because they're so mad that they can't be part of this war. Maybe they're just mad that they can't dance. I don't know. Okay, so let's see, I saw another question go flying by there. Let's see if I can find it. Please speak on Gaza City income streams. Do they survive on foreign assistance? Lynn Day. Okay, let's talk about Gaza's income streams. Gaza, first of all, Hamas, the government of Gaza, up until the war started, was making about $12 million a month in tax money on goods that were shipped in from Egypt into Gaza. That, of course, probably has stopped now. So they did get quite a bit of money from taxes every year. They didn't. Okay, so that's one income stream. They also received hundreds of millions of dollars from various different donors like Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. Let's see, there's others. And each of these is in the like $100 million plus category. So they're getting at least as much in donor money as they are in taxes. Then you have UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for the Palestinian Authority. And it is one of the largest UN agencies. So you have like the UN World, you have UN, all kinds of programs, all kinds of agencies that deal with different parts of the world. Gaza, being one of the smallest geographical areas, actually has one of the largest, in terms of money, programs under the UN. And they get something like $1.6 billion a year from the United Nations. Now, a large part of that is paid for by the United States. First of all, the U.S. gets, the U.S. pays for about 22% of the UN budget, total budget. Okay, and some of that money goes to UNRWA. But UNRWA also takes additional like donations from governments around the world to fund its operations. And the United States gives more money to that. So something like, I mean, it's in the 300 million or more per year that's given by the United States specifically to UNRWA. Now, the UN Relief and Works Agency, you'd think, would be relieving the difficult lives of those people and putting works together, as in buildings and things like that, to improve their lives. We are finding a lot out now about the fact that the UN Relief and Works Agency was being used to funnel money to Hamas. They're building schools. Hamas uses the schools as a base for their operations. They're building, child care centers. Hamas puts a rocket array in the child care center, or a tunnel entrance right next to it, or something like that. A lot of the UN relief that goes in there, I've seen this actually with a lot of relief agencies. I don't even need to see it to know, because I've been doing this for 20 years. When you send massive amounts of relief into a country, that relief doesn't just get nicely handed out to the neediest people and so that they can have a better life. No, a lot of it gets rounded up and collected up by the bullies, the strongest in that society, and then sold to the weakest, to the people who need it the most. I've seen this all over the world, and I can guarantee you that happens in Gaza. I've seen it in Haiti. In Haiti, you can go to the marketplace and you can see U.S. aid given by the United States. You know it's given by the United States because these big bags of rice have a giant American flag on them, and it says U.S. aid, a gift from the American people. Okay, it's a gift from the American people. And we send shiploads of that grain to Haiti every year. That grain is supposed to be a gift from the American people. And it says right on the bag, not for sale. And you go to the marketplace in Haiti, and there's these bags lined up for sale. And the people will tell you, like, we don't get given anything. Like, the people, people in charge take this aid that's given, and then they sell it to the people. And I can guarantee you there's some amount of that happens in Gaza. No question whatsoever. If you really want to get disgusted by the damage that American and Western aid does around the world, there's a couple of really good books on the subject. One is called Lords of Poverty. Lords of Poverty will make you want to throw up and never pay your taxes again, because when you hear about how damaging and how corrupt the aid is that goes from the United States all over the world. These guys are playing cops and robbers down here, running around and shooting at each other with plastic guns. That's cool. If you want to get really disgusted with how aid can hurt people, look up Lords of Poverty. If you want to know how Christian aid agencies can do the same, and often do the same as far as damaging people rather than helping them, there's a better book that's called When Helping Hurts. And I would highly recommend, if you give to charity, go read it, which all of us should, of course, give to charity. You don't want to give up that blessing, believe me. It's a great, great blessing to give to charity. But if you give to charity, you should definitely read the book called When Helping Hurts, because it explains very clearly how aid in any form, whether you're helping the bum on the street corner, the guy that's, panhandling as you're stopped at the stoplight, or giving your money to people around the world, you have to be very careful and very intentional about not damaging them in the process. Because when you give something to somebody, you're also taking something from them, and that's a little piece of their dignity. And you have to be aware of that. You have to be cognizant of and intentional of, how can I be very careful about my giving so that I'm not removing somebody's dignity to the point that it damages their relationship with themselves, their understanding of God, their understanding of their place in their society, and their, relationship with their environment around them. All of those things can be damaged if aid is given incorrectly. Well, the United States is the king of giving aid incorrectly, and I think the poster child for that whole point is Gaza, without a doubt. All right, let's see if we got any Christians praying for them, or praying for aiding and abetting, praying for them or aiding and abetting who oppose God's kingdom. I'm not sure about that, David. Let's see. Watching breaking news live right now. U.S. ships are under attack. Okay, well, we knew that there was attacks on British ship, but I didn't see on American ships. So we know that there have been a real uptick in attacks on U.S. forces in this region, in Iraq and Syria and stuff like that. I saw some more attacks on those today. Mossab Hassan Yosef. This is the son of Hamas. Go read his book. There's a book out about him, and if you don't want to read it, there's a documentary out about him that basically is what's in the book. And sounds like he is definitely in the limelight these days. Let's see. All right. Thank you for hitting thumbs up, folks. Does the hotel still make money for housing the Israelis that are displaced? Do they get paid directly from the government? Is it hurting their total income? No, they are getting paid to house. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking a nicely thought out, reasoned question. The hotels here are getting money from the government to house these people. And if the people don't need a hotel, let's say that they have family members they'd rather go stay with, or they've got a house at the beach or something like that, they get the money given to them instead of given to the hotel. That's all I know about that program. I don't know how much they're getting, and I don't know if the hotels are. I would imagine that the government is negotiating some kind of rate with the hotels to put people in there. They're not putting them in cheap hotels. Cheap hotels are missing out on this whole thing. The hotels that they're putting their people in are $200 a night or more, I would say, pretty much across the board. They're nice hotels they're putting them in. And that's great, but again, these people have been there for almost 2 months and they're pretty bored at this point and wish that they could just go home. They may start moving some of these people back home if they can get a handle on the rocket fire, but I'm afraid the people in the north, it's going to be a long time because Hezbollah still has a tremendous amount of rockets. The rocket fire coming out of the south, I think, will, in short order, start to decrease. Oh, I was talking about the Bedouins. I'm sorry, I got distracted. The IDF has soldiers that are not just Jews. They have Christians. Well, Christians are very, very, very tiny minority in Israel, like 1.6%. About 20% of Israelis are Arabs. About 18% of Israelis are Muslims. So there's 2% of Arabs that are not Muslims. They may be Christians, they may be whatever, or something else. Druze, there's Bedouins, there's all sorts of stuff. Okay, a lot of the Bedouins are actually Muslim. Bedouin is a people group, not a religion. They are, I guess, they're nomads. They're, for lack of a better term, they're like gypsies, kind of. And they're primarily agrarian still. The Bedouins live, you can see them if you drive out of Jerusalem down toward the Dead Sea. When you get out of Jerusalem, and it's just like what would have been called the wilderness that Jesus wandered in the part of Samaria. You'll see these Bedouin encampments out there. They just go and just sort of set up these little tin shacks. And they're not, I guess, you know, Joe Biden would maybe call them settlers, but it's just their own little thing. They have lots of goats, they have camels, they have lots of sheep, stuff like that. But they build the most rudimentary housing, and I don't know how they even get water. Somebody said that they have to truck water in there, but there's certainly no water around where they live. There's no trees, there's no grass, there's nothing. It's just dirt. And they just build these little shanty towns. It's the poorest housing I've seen in all of Israel. Now, apparently they used to actually be in tents, and that because they're nomadic, you know, they lived in these goat hair tents. And if you go to Jordan today, you can still see Bedouin in Jordan that do live in the tents. And they do move around because there's so little grass or anything to feed their goats that they do have to kind of move every month or two, I guess. And then they range very widely around there, and their goats eat every scrap of anything that's growing, which isn't much. And I don't know how they survive. I swear those goats eat dirt. That's the only thing out there. I mean, it's unbelievable. But that's why they have to move around. Maybe these Bedouins out there that are outside of Jerusalem do that, and they just screw together, instead of using a tent, they take like the roofing, metal roofing panels, and they screw those together into a shack of some sort and just live in there. No electricity, no running water. Very rudimentary, without a doubt. But some of those people actually serve in the military. And so you actually have even high-ranking people in the IDF who come from the Bedouin people group. You have people in the IDF that come from the Samaritan people group. These are descendants of the original Samaritans, the Good Samaritan from the Bible. They still exist, and they almost died out. I'm told that that people group, because they're very, very insular, they dwindled down to like 185 people at some point, like a couple hundred years ago, or a little over 100 years ago. And they just almost died out for good, but they managed to survive and hold on and work their way back. and they now number something about 800 or 1,000. Most of them live on Mount Gerizim, which is in Samaria, in the West Bank. The Samaritans are a form of, they adhere to a form of Judaism. They believe that they are the only true Jews, and that the true Mount Zion, the true place where Jesus will return, you know, that the Messiah will return, not Jesus, the Messiah will return, is out on Mount Gerizim, out there. And so they actually still slaughter a lamb on Passover and all that kind of stuff. Like, they really adhere to these kind of different customs. And they kind of strike me as like the Mormons of the Jewish world, you know, or something like that. We're like, I don't know, it's just, you know, just a little, not quite a cult, or I don't know, maybe a cult of Judaism. I'm not sure. That's not what even interests me so much about the Samaritans. The interesting thing about them is that you can tell a Samaritan when he comes walking down the street towards you, because he's got really big ears. And it's just a product of the fact that they had to sort of inbreed a lot over the generations to just try to stay alive. And I guess they've had to go out and they've had to recruit and try to get people from around the world, like Ukraine and places like that, and say, wouldn't you like to really be a Samaritan, nice lady, and go find some fresh genetic material to bring into their you know, community, in order to keep from everybody kind of getting really weird. But so people will tell you, oh, that guy's a Samaritan. Well, how do you know? Because his ears are big. And you're like, wow, his ears really are big. And that's really interesting to me. Fascinating stuff. This is what my friend Michael Yon would call an anthro-insula, an island of people. And the island happens to be on a mountaintop, Mount Gerizim, out in Samaria. So there are Samaritans that are in the IDF. There are Druze that are in the IDF. Muslims, Christians, you know, everybody. And so I hope that answered your question. That was probably a really long answer to a really short question. Okay, we're going to have to go here pretty quick. I'm Ashkenazi on mom's side. Zimbabwe. Update us on the Panama mine. Okay, David Holy, that's a very good question about the mining problem in Panama. Tell you what, I will address that on my podcast on the Hot Zone today. Probably I can talk about that a little bit and give you an update on what's going on in Panama. But I'm not going to do that here. So I'll just quickly update you one more time on the latest here in Israel. The IDF is ramping up big time in Gaza. They are bombing not just in the north, but in the south. They're pushing, they still have quite a ways to go. Even in the north, they have encircled the place, but moving into and taking everything in Gaza City is going to take them, I mean, at the rate they're going, it's going to take months. And there are rumors, unconfirmed reports, let's say, and even photos of IDF troops on the ground in the south of Gaza, and the IDF has not confirmed that yet. But there's lots of video out, some of which I'll put up on my website, chuckholton.com, after this is over, of the IDF absolutely flattening a whole neighborhood in southern Gaza. The reason for that is likely because there was rocket fire coming out of that neighborhood. Again, Hamas has militarized the entirety of Gaza. There's no place in Gaza that's not part of the military, that's not owned by Hamas, essentially. And so that's going to make the job of the IDF very, very, very difficult. So we need to pray for them. So let's go ahead and pray, and we'll get out of here. I got to prepare for another live hit here coming up shortly. So thank you for joining us tonight, folks. I appreciate it. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I want to pray specifically for these children down below me right now. They are growing up in a nation at war, and I pray that you would protect their little minds from the trauma of that. I pray that this time would just be fun for them, that they'd be sheltered from all of the horrors that are going on around them. I pray that you would send people to provide for them, that you would allow their parents to be able to get back to their homes, take them home very soon, so that they get back to school and they could, you know, kind of overcome this and move on. We pray, Lord, for the children in Gaza as well. We know that you love all children, and that you are just so saddened by what is happening in Gaza right now. And we're sad, but we understand that it's necessary on the part of the Israelis for what they have to do. We pray, Lord, that Hamas would see the error of their ways and would just give up. The IDF is asking them to do so, is giving them opportunities to do so. We pray that they would just give up and that this could be over very shortly and we could all go home. We thank you for the hope of Christmas that's coming up, Lord, especially here in the Holy Land. That some of these ancient churches that are not even doing Christmas this year in any big way. We pray for down in Bethlehem, Lord, where they're not holding a Christmas ceremony this year. We pray that that wouldn't ever have to happen again. And we just pray your blessings on those who are watching around the world. It's an uncertain time, but I pray that we as believers would have a confidence in you that just shines to everybody around us, so that they can see our fearlessness and see the fact that we have that peace that passes all understanding and want what we have, because we can be joyful even in the midst of tragedy. People will want that. I pray they would, and I pray your Holy Spirit would move among us, Jesus. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you, folks. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.